Hello, hello. How are you?
Hey. Hi, Michael. I'm well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Uh, had a nice week in the meantime. How about you?
Yeah, I've had a wonderful week. The weather's nice. It's lovely out here in
Yeah,
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And hello to everyone at home.
yeah.
This is the Noteworthy Podcast. I'm Abby. Abby Dew, as my father, may he rest in power, would affectionately call me. And my co-host there, Michael, is in. Where are you, Michael?
Windsor, Ontario, across the
Windsor.
border from Detroit.
Hmm. Interesting. So we're coming to you today to talk about the Sahel Alliance and what's going on in Myanmar.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly? Myanmar.
I think this is gonna be a stream where we're gonna butcher all those names. So I think it's Myanmar.
Myanmar. Okay. All right.
Hoping
Well,
not to get in any city names.
all right. Yeah. So I'm going to start with the Sahel region. This is the Sahel region in Africa. Um, it spans from the west to the east in the northern part of Africa. And there's a lot going on in that area. And the information just keeps, like, every day is something new. So we're going to try to go through as much as we can, and figure out what's going on, because there's like coups happening, eh, every other week or something in this area. So we're going to start with Niger, and work our way to the other side.
Oh, I can't hear it. Can you hear it?
You can't hear it?
No, I can't hear
Yes,
it.
I can. You can't hear it?
Uh-oh. No. Uh-oh. That's okay.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I
Okay,
thought we were
so
gonna be able to hear it. It worked before, but sorry, everyone.
yeah, I know. But that's the beauty of live podcasting. You just got to go with it.
Wow.
And let's try it again, okay? Hear it? Can you hear it?
Uh, no, sorry. Uh,
Could you hear it?
gotta play it again. You wanna hit play?
Another attempted diplomacy to reverse the
Here we
coup.
Is it good?
The statement by General.
You can hear it. Yes. Thank you. All right. Let's start that over.
Okay, sorry, everyone. Here we
All
go.
right. Here we go.
Niger's military ruler has proposed a 3-year transition of power after West African leaders made another attempted diplomacy to reverse the coup. The statement by General Abdurrahmani Chiani followed talks with a delegation from West Africa's main regional bloc, ECOWAS. They also met Niger's deposed president. It's the first time Mohamed Bazoum has been seen in public since last month's military takeover. Nicholas Haak reports.
Answering the junta's call to mobilize, tens of thousands of volunteers gathered outside of Niger's national stadium to join the armed forces. To the junta, this is a show of popular support for last month's coup, an act of defiance in the face of the threat of military action from the West African body ECOWAS, which wants to reinstate the deposed elected President Bazoum. And the coup leader, General Chiani, delivered a message of his own after meeting an ECOWAS delegation in the capital Niamey.
Neither the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland nor the people of Niger want war and remain open to dialogue. But let us be clear, if an attack were to be undertaken against us, it will not be the walk in the park some people seem to think.
Huh. Okay, I absolutely love that part because he hit them with the fuck around and find out. I thought that was awesome. It's not going to be the walk in the park you think it would be. You could try it, but
Bit of a dangerous
we
game,
want all the
but
smoke.
it's not them who started it.
Exactly. But they have a right to respond, correct?
Yep.
All right, let's keep going.
The ECOWAS delegation also met with President Bazoum. He held little access for electricity. His health is reportedly deteriorating.
We met him. We heard from him what was done to him. He told us about the problems he's facing that we will take to the leaders that sent us here.
The junta accused him of treason for acting in the interest of a foreign state, alluding to France, the former colonial power.
The will to act militarily is to stop what could be seen as a contagion of coups. There's been coups in Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Mali. Countries who carry the ECOWAS mandate, like Senegal and Ivory Coast, want to stop this. But these states are seen as too close to France, the former colonial power. For part of the population, ECOWAS is seen as the armed branch of the former colonial power.
Now, I wouldn't even just consider ECOWAS as the armed branch of France, right? I mean, it's really the armed branch of NATO, in my opinion, led by their puppet, the puppet president of Nigeria.
Right.
So, I don't know.
The junta leaders in neighboring Mali and Burkina Faso have sent their military planes already. General Chiani and supporters seem to be determined to cling on to power, no matter the consequences. Nicholas Hawk, Al Jazeera.
Meanwhile, Washington, which has a strong military presence in Niger, has sent its new ambassador to the capital, Niamey.
Let's see. Okay. So
looks like the video's a bit glitchy. Sorry about that.
Oh, is it? Okay. So I find this interesting. Let me just continue with this video because they say something interesting towards the end that I wanted to kind of talk about. Because they said, well, actually, I think they already said it. So they want like two years. Let me see. I think they want like about 3 years, I think, or maybe that's Burkina Faso. We'll see. To write their constitution. Okay.
There's a lot of these constitutions are kind of written by colonial powers.
Right. So it's 3 years, and I tend to agree with the 3 years. They said they want to. They're eager to restore constitutional order. That's what they're saying. Okay, and restoring constitutional order is just reinstating the same constitution that favors France stronghold over them. And the people seem to be backing them, as you can see. They're in the streets, excited about what's going on. And I don't know about you in Canada, Michael, but our Constitution, it wasn't written in 3 years. Like, okay, 1776, that was the Declaration of Independence. And then they did the Articles of Confederation in 1777. That's what made states sovereign and able to create state governments, right? The Constitution wasn't even written until 1787. It was ratified in 1788. That's 11 years.
Mm-hmm. It takes that kind of time for this kind of thing because it's that important. So.
Right, and they're bitching about 3.
Yeah, in Canada, our constitution's a bit of an impossible to change constitution.
Really?
Well, it's not technically impossible, but you have to get like all the provinces to agree, and they're never going to do that.
Yeah, right. It's impossible by default. It's impossible. Like the 2-state solution is possible. They're never going to agree, and it's not going to happen. So I just find it interesting I want to talk about a little bit about the resources in Niger, right? Because why is France so quick to want to restore their constitutional order? So I'm looking at this article from Eurasia Review. Okay, the first thing I saw, it says, without French investment, Niger's mines could lie dormant or be occupied by a malicious actor. And I said, okay, this article is starting off with the bullshit.
Yeah, that's a big could.
it's like it's starting off with the white savior. You need me, or you're not going to be able to make it without me. you know.
Yeah,
But
it's
anyway,
like that old boyfriend. You can't live without me, baby. Come back to me.
right? That narcissist. So, France relies on nuclear power as a key source of its energy production. France derives approximately 70% of its electricity from nuclear power. Niger has its second largest supplier at 20% of French uranium imports over the past 10 years. It only trailing behind Kazakhstan at 27%. Now, Orano, that is a corporation, a French corporation that operates in Niger. They maintain majority shares in 3 mines in Niger. Only one operates right now, but it says, while some politicians may overstate this concern as a matter of security, these deposits are located very close to the increasingly unstable border of Mali. And why is Mali unstable? They're unstable because, they had a coup as well and ousted their puppet. So now they're unstable. Okay, thank you.
Well, actually, I thought they were looking pretty stable for someone who just recently ousted a puppet. But
Yeah.
I haven't really been tuning in so much. I've been a little bit focused elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm going to show you how stable they are, actually. So it's interesting because Niger suspended their exports of uranium and gold to France. So that's why they're trying to rush. Today, uranium ore makes up a whopping 75% of Niger's foreign exports. Since the coup, Niger has massively increased the price of uranium from 0.80 euro to 200 euro in an attempt to match the cost of uranium produced in other countries worldwide, particularly where you at, Michael? Canada. Now, France was buying the uranium, you see that, like pennies on the dollar, and then using it or reselling it. So they were basically robbing Niger of their resources. So this tectonic shift reflects the Nigerian junta's interest in redefining its relationship with France, which benefited from cheap uranium purchased in a former colony. Okay. Now, this is what this article at Eurasia says, but I found an article at Forbes I thought was very interesting. Okay, Forbes magazine says, more rumors, what is really happening with Niger's uranium? They're basically saying everything I read, none of that shit is true. None of that's happening. They didn't increase their prices. Nope.
Always expect the
And
gas.
I'm like, okay, Forbes, I don't think I'm going to believe you, because yeah, I find it so interesting because while I was doing research, every article that I read or a video that I saw that was from Asian media and African media was confirming all the stuff I just read to you. And here comes Forbes, and they're like, nope, we're debunking all that bullshit. None of that happened. Okay, that's crazy. I don't believe it. Nope, they didn't ban their exports of uranium and gold. Never happened. It's like they're shaking in their boots and they're trying to convince us that that they're not going to survive without their intervention, you know?
Well, it's almost like when they were kids, no one ever told them, if you keep lying, you know, they're gonna realize, and then it's not gonna keep working for you anymore. But
Right. It's the NATO that's cried wolf, right?
yeah,
So I'm going to move on to Burkina Faso, which also had a coup. And let's see what's going on over there.
It was not long ago that Ibrahim Traore, a relatively low-ranking officer in Burkina Faso's military, was running an artillery regiment in a small northern town. Now, cheering crowds greet the self-declared leader after he and a group of soldiers overthrew President Paul-Henri Damiba. It was the West African country's second coup this year. But in an interview with Radio France International, Traore insisted he will not be in charge for long. A national conference will appoint a new interim leader by the end of the year, he said, and an agreement with West Africa's regional bloc for a return to civilian rule by 2024 would be honored.
So basically, they're not these military leaders. They aren't trying to rule over the people. They want the people to have a say in how they are governed. So they're gonna turn it over in a year. They say, okay, so that's less than Niger. I mean, Burkina Faso is also rich in minerals and in other things. So we know why they want to.
They'll probably face pressure from the United States and France and others to cause them to maybe stay in power, because they fear that if they hand over power, then the influence of the West will seep back in. So it's always tricky. I hope that what's happened in Sudan doesn't quite repeat. So
right, yeah, I hope so too.
I get a different vibe from these guys, though.
That's how I'm feeling. Like I'm getting a different vibe from them. So I could be wrong, but I'm rooting for every last one of these coups. So let's go to Mali then, because remember, they were, according to that article from Eurasia Review, politicians are concerned because Mali's border is increasingly unstable, folks. And yet here they are.
Colonel Assimi Goïta, head of leaders, politicians, and civil society, in a bid to promote Mali's new draft constitution.
Okay, so they're so unstable, they already have a draft constitution. I don't know. They're further along than the other two because they have that draft constitution written up. So I'm just very excited and curious to see, what happens. But let's see what he has to say about this draft constitution. Okay.
The draft constitution is the subject of our meeting today. It's the result of discussions during which the members of the commission freely expressed themselves and took into account the major concerns expressed by Malians. Initially, the referendum for its adoption was to be held on Sunday, March 19, but was later postponed. We must work together so that Malian people, with full knowledge of the fact that ownership of the draft constitution and adapt it by a large majority, we will then have taken a decisive step into the process of rebuilding our states. The constitution is the starting point of the vast reform project initiated by the transitional authorities in Mali for the return of the civilian power.
The graveyard of past gifts from the days I thought he loved.
Okay, lady.
Love another generic tie.
Mine, yeah.
Okay, lady. So it just sounds like they really are people to benefit from it.
5 ans.
Right. Even one in Guinea. Well, this one's interesting. Okay, and you'll see why in a minute. I don't want to give it up. Hold on.
On Saturday, December 2nd, 2023, Guinea-Bissau's President Umaro Sissoco Embalo officially confirmed that gunfire and clashes that had erupted in Bissau, the capital of the West African nation, on Friday, December 1st, 2023, were elements of an attempted coup. President Embalo made this announcement after extensive consultation with security forces, confirming fears about the newest threat to democracy in the increasingly turbulent and coup-prone region of West Africa. Rumors of the attempted coup first broke out after clashes between the National Guard and Presidential Guard Special Forces erupted in Bissau on Thursday night, and continued on Friday after National Guard soldiers released 2 top government officials jailed in connection with a corruption investigation. Embalo, who was in Dubai attending the COP28 climate conference, arrived in Bissau on Saturday and revealed that it was the attempted coup d'etat that had prevented him from returning. I can assure you that the events of December 1, 2023 are yet another attempted coup, and those responsible will suffer serious consequences, Embalo told journalists after arriving from Dubai.
Ooh, excuse me.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
This one didn't work. Okay. I know. I'm the guy that attempted the coup. They caught him and he's locked up now. So and I think this was their second attempt. So they're trying hard to get their country back. But let's see. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit.
We'll see what happens by next week. You never know with this kind of stuff.
Right. Right. Maybe they'll maybe next week they'll prevail. We'll see.
This is the second coup attempt against the regime. President Umaro Embalo attacked government buildings in the capital, Bissau, while Embalo was chairing a cabinet meeting. The attackers engaged in a 5-hour gun battle with security forces before being repelled. Embalo escaped unharmed, but at least 11 people were killed, mostly among the government's security team. The coup attempt was widely condemned by the international community, and
of course it was condemned by the international community, right?
Well, the
who is
international community
who is
of Europe
international
and North America.
Europe. The international community of NATO. All right.
Embalo accused former Navy Chief Admiral Jose Americo Bubo Nachuto of orchestrating the attack. Interestingly, this latest coup attempt in Guinea-Bissau is also the second coup attempt in West Africa in just 1 week after officials in Sierra Leone officially confirmed on Tuesday, November 28, 2023, that attacks on several locations in the capital, Freetown, on Sunday, November 26, 2023, were part of a failed coup attempt. These attempted coups exacerbate tensions in a region where military takeovers have increased, with 8 since 2020, including this year's coups in Niger and Gabon.
Man, these look, the colonizers are shaking in their boots. Shaking in their boots, man.
Yep. Freedom's in the air, I guess.
And now I'm not going to bother reading this article, but I just wanted to show like what he's doing since the failed coup. So he's trying to clean house of anybody who opposes him and regain, his control. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Interesting to see where the democracy, how democratic they end up being in the end, always, right?
Right,
they
right.
Just as authoritarian.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that it's really to be governed, for the people to be able to have a say so on how they're governed But you never know when people get power. Sometimes they start feeling themselves. But not all of them, not always. So I'm hoping it's the latter. Okay. Now let's move on to Gabon then. So, because Gabon just had a coup as well. And I think this one is rather recent, like in the last few days or something. Let's see, if I'm not mistaken.
In the UK, the British government has joined a number of other Western nations in condemning the coup in Gabon on Wednesday. The country's military has named one of its generals as the new transitional leader. The country's longtime president, Ali Bongo, has been put under house arrest and a curfew is in place. Well, the military takeover in Gabon is the 8th in West and Central Africa since 2020, and the 2nd after Niger. The BBC's Africa regional editor, Will Ross, has more.
On the streets of Gabon, celebrations for Africa's latest military leader.
Au sein du comité pour la transition.
Earlier, a dozen senior officers said for the sake of peace, they were putting an end to what they called the regime and were taking over. They cancelled the result of last weekend's election. Many journalists and observers were barred from monitoring the vote. The opposition said it was a sham, and it was no surprise when this man, President Ali Bongo, was declared the winner.
Ali Bongo, Ondimba, President.
Wow, he looks so much different. He's eaten high off the hog before, but now that he's been captured, he's missing a few meals. I guess he's not eating steaks anymore.
And I'm to send a message to all the friends.
In his presidential palace.
For the people here have arrested me.
Here's the president's father, Omar Bongo, at Downing Street in the 70s. The same family has been in power in Gabon since 1967.
The same family's been in power since 1967. So this is like a lot of these leaders are, yeah. A lot of these leaders are children of puppets, that were installed long ago by whatever puppet master was over them, be it the UK, the United States, France. I think here they said the UK, right? Yeah, the British. So anyway, let's move on. And look, the people look pretty happy about what's going on.
I would be.
Today, people are celebrating what looks like the end of the Bongo dynasty. It's been a key Western ally in the fight against violent extremism in an increasingly unstable region. Along with some highly suspicious elections and 8 coups in just 3 years, democracy in Africa is taking a battering. As
democracy or imperialism?
BBC News.
Okay, BBC News. Okay, they're saying it is increasing instability. For who? The thieves, I guess. Like you have to think about who they're speaking to, or what perspective they're speaking from. Right now, what I found. Go ahead.
Stability is often considered always a good thing, but it's not inherently positive or negative. Sometimes if you got too much stability, you got stagnation. So, nuance.
That's well said. Yes, right. That's well said. Now, this is what I found interesting, okay? This is ECOWAS, the countries that are in ECOWAS. Gabon is not a part of that. Gabon is under Cameroon, next to Congo. So I don't know. I mean, I find it interesting. I don't know what it means. I didn't have enough time to go down the rabbit hole to try to come up with some answers. But I had that in the back of my head, and maybe we'll be able to discuss that at another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
I also
all
heard this morning about Sierra Leone might be having a coup going on there too, but we'll have to get into that
wow.
another.
Yeah, yeah. It's just so much information. It's just too much to even. First, you have to wrap your head around it, you know, and digest it, and then try to make some sense of it. And so I showed all of those coups to say to talk about the Sahel region, right? What's going on in the Sahel region? Okay. Now, I went to I wanted to I went to the alliancesahel.org. This is the first thing I noticed. Okay. The website is funded by Germany, the European Union, Italy, Canada, and the West African Development Bank. And I was like, oh, fine, great. Now finally I see something from the people who, are actually part of the region. So let me look up the West African Development Bank and find out a little more about that. Well, Nigeria is the largest shareholder of that bank. And now it all makes sense. Because Nigeria is like the biggest puppet, like they're the puppet ringleader of ECOWAS. So when I go to the SahelAlliance.org to see what they have to say, of course it's from their perspective, correct? And they say that it's the Sahel region is full of potential, which makes this area a land of opportunity, human capital, natural resources, renewable energy potential. But unfortunately, several factors hinder its development. Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, I think I butchered that, Mauritania, and Niger face many challenges. Yeah, from you guys, including chronic insecurity, a lack of economic prospects, and poor access to education, employment, and essential services such as water and electricity. Okay. So climate change is weakening the region even more. An appropriate reaction, one that would be rapidly effective in the field, was necessary to deal with this unstable and fragile situation. Oh, boo-hoo. A response taking security challenges into account, a response capable of ensuring the region's lasting and sustainable development. Now, what type of response do you think they are going to have? What's their response going to be? Just doing more of the same, right, Michael?
Well, I'm thinking that they're wanting to cause a counter coup. It seems like their most likely choice of action, because their other alternative is to try and work with them in a diplomatic kind of way, and the West isn't really good at that,
Right. Because so let's move on.
Like France
Go ahead.
doesn't have a choice. France is screwed if they don't reverse the situation. If they have just a couple African states on their side, their economy needs all of them, I think.
Yes. Right. They're basically living off of the resources of Africa that they're stealing. So
especially with being cut off from Russian oil and gas.
Especially, and the uranium. Oh, this article just came out today. Oh, yesterday. Chad and Mauritania, I hope I'm not butchering that, pave way for dissolution of the G5 Sahel Alliance. Okay, so this is not G7, folks. This is G5. It is, well, you'll see what it is when I read some of these things. The two remaining members of West Africa's G5 Sahel Alliance on Wednesday said they were paving the way to dissolving the anti-rebel grouping after the other three founding countries left. In a joint statement, Chad and Mauritania said they take note and respect the sovereign decision of Burkina Faso and Niger to lead the alliance, following in the footsteps of Mali, which quit in 2022. They're sick of their shit. The alliance, which included Mauritania, Chad, Burkina Faso, blah, 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 was created in 2014 with counterinsurgency force added in 2017, backed by France. Now, are we surprised that a group that's backed by France, powered by Nigeria, is failing to provide the people what they need? I'm not shocked. Are you, Michael?
Not even a little bit. It's interesting, this number 2017 seems to be cropping up in this stream.
Not
You'll
even
see
a
when I
little
get
bit.
into my stuff. A lot seemed to have happened in that year.
Yeah. In 2017, leaders of the 5 countries agreed to deploy a joint anti-terror task force backed by France. But the military rulers of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali have all accused Paris of having an outsized role after years of French deployments on their territories. So they created this G5 so they could just drag this shit along and bullshit the people even more than what they've already been doing. You know, it's almost like, it's kind of like the reparations summit that they had. Like they created a council in America to talk about reparations, and we're like, okay, what is there to talk about?
Yeah.
I don't know what there's to talk about. It's old. Pay us.
Well, they had to call it the G5 because they couldn't call it the African Colonizers Alliance.
Yeah. Right? G5 sound, I mean, I guess it sounds more official, like the G7. Now I'm gonna end my segment with this, a short clip about what's happening after the Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger told G5 deuces.
Development is public affairs analyst Chooks Nwoko. Chooks, it's good to see you.
Thank you for having me. Good morning. Good morning.
Right. Now,
oh wait, I'm sorry. I have to start that over.
In an effort to strengthen security, the foreign ministers of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have endorsed plans to create a confederation of the 3 West African countries. The 3 countries currently ruled by their militaries announced their decision in a joint statement following a 2-day meeting in Mali's capital, Bamako, focusing on plans to develop the new Alliance of Sahel States, AES. The foreign minister spoke of the great potential for peace, stability, diplomatic strength, and economic development that a strengthened political alliance offers. The states were previously members of the Paris-backed G5 since falling apart following a series of military coups in the region. Joining us in the studio to discuss this later.
So basically they were like, fuck this, we doing our own thing. And I'm so happy for them.
I'd rather stand on my own 2 legs.
I am so happy. Right. And I'm just going to read and I think you have something to say about this too as well. And while you're pulling it up, I'm just going to read some comments. Go ahead.
When you told me you were covering the Confederation thing there, I'd come across a video that I thought was very timely, relevant, whatever. Sorry, yeah, it's just tied in with what you're saying. So I'll show it.
Okay, so Carlos says the evil Banana Republic USA empire continues its mission of death and destruction, but the hegemony is crumbling. Yes, it is. And I don't mind at all.
Finally.
Hey, stay balanced. Stay balanced says France, unfortunately, has not helped with stopping terrorism. That's why they were asked to go. Yes. And lastly, Tosh Mitch says, deuces. So go ahead, Michael. Show us what you found.
Okay. Whoa, sorry.
Everything.
All right. So you still can you see?
Can you make it a little bigger?
Make it a little bigger.
Yeah, I think so.
You see that?
Yes.
And
strength
can
and
you hear that?
stability in the forefront.
Sisters,
Yes.
to have a common currency and a common market. So this declaration from the meeting of foreign ministers of the Alliance of Sahel States held on November 3rd this year in Bamako, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to use one currency. Remember last week there is also an agreement to establish an airline that will connect the three countries which will operate between Sahel major cities. So do you see this is the good move for the people of Africa, especially those who are in the countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger? Of course, as to have a common or single currency has become a difficult one to the people of Africa because we have seen ECOWAS planned to have a single currency by 2022, but the plan had failed. Also, East African Community plans to have a single currency by 2024, but it looks like it will not succeed. Let us see if Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger will succeed to have a single currency. And if these three countries will succeed to have a single currency, I hope this will be the footsteps of Africa toward a single currency. Because you know all of us that Africa is suffering with the cost of transactions. You know the continent of Africa has almost 54 currencies. So to exchange, it is very, very difficult. And this become a barrier for business and for economic activities. But all in all, let us go to Angola, where we have seen the president of Angola, Mr. Joao Lorenzo, in White House, but the United States of America President Joe Biden said no country is more than or is more important than Angola. Do you agree with President Biden on this? This is because the U.S. is funding the U.S. 1 billion led project from Angola's Lobito corridor, which will link Angola with minority parties of Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it is the biggest US led investment in Africa ever. So there has a big competition. We have seen also China investing in rail in Africa, but America has focused on this corridor to facilitate these rich parts of Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Of course, one day I came here and I spoken in this that those who are building our infrastructure, they focus on the outrage of minerals and these natural resources. They are not focusing on connecting the people of Africa. So you see, this project is funded to to the richest parts of Zambia and the Democratic Republic. But of course, it will help us. But
Can I say something?
uh,
Yep. Go ahead.
It's almost done. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Cool.
About funding. So if you want to good thing, let us fund yourself. But if someone is funding to you, it means it's funding according to his wish or her wish and according to his or her target. So with those few words, let me say thank you. This is just an update from our other continent, Africa. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
It's like we don't even have enough time to talk about all of the issues because, like the Democratic Republic of Congo, they are really going through it. Like that could be its own show just to talk about what's going on over there. And
yeah, some of the things he just said, we could have gotten into. Maybe we'll have to try and get into that next time. So
yeah, I know. It's never enough time, is it?
there's so much going on, it's an interesting
Right.
time to be alive. So yeah, so for the
Yes,
sake of
yes.
time, got to keep moving here. So getting into the
Yep.
Myanmar story now.
Okay, yeah. But I just want to point out that Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali are talking about creating their own currency. So I can't wait to. We'll get into that too at another time. I want to see how that develops because Gaddafi was trying to do that, and that's why they killed him. I mean,
Well, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Well, we'll see. Well, I hope it doesn't rhyme quite so much this time. So
Stay Balanced says check out Beyond the Arc because he did a really interesting piece in educating us about the Congo. So yeah, check that out on Revolutionary Blackout Network, the Long Beach chapter. Shout out to Compton J, by the way. So yeah, let's talk about what's happening in Myanmar.
Myanmar. So I saw this when I was on Twitter, and it was a little bit out of the blue. There's a lot of heavy focus on Palestine right now, so I thought maybe it would be good for us to see what else is going on in the other side of the world. So I just thought that this is where the story starts, and I'd show you where we go from here. So just a little bit of background. The Rohingya conflict has a long history of armed insurrections and military crackdowns. The Rohingya population has faced military crackdowns in 1978, 1991, 1992, 2012, 2015, particularly in 2016, 2018. In 1948, when Myanmar achieved independence from the British, violent conflicts broke out among various segments of its more than 100 ethnic and racial groups. After independence, the Rohingya asked for the promised autonomous state, but officials rejected their request. So what is this promised autonomous state? We're going to get into it. There was
Michael, 1948 was one hell of a year, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot going on with the fall of the British Empire, and there's a big a serious amount of mess left to clean up all of this time after. So as much as people want to say, what does 1948 have to do with anything? It has everything to do with everything. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So something. So there's been a lot of different history here. We don't have time to really get into everything, but it's important to note that with the fall of the Soviet Union, around that time, there was a lot of things going on in Myanmar too. So there's the People Power Uprising, also known as the 8888 Uprising, was a series of nationwide protests, marches, and riots in Burma that peaked in August 1988. The uprising spoke out against the totalitarian government and demanded democracy and human rights. However, the protests were met with extreme violence and a bloody military coup led by General Sao Mong, who declared martial law and killed thousands of people, including monks and school children. The 88 uprising is also, yeah. So it's a little bit of a thing as communists for us to be aware of so-called socialist states and failed socialist states. So Myanmar is one of those things that's difficult for us in the West to understand. Are they socialist or are they pretending? So let's get into it. So Myanmar's military is losing ground against coordinated nationwide attacks, buoying opposition hopes. Let me just make this a little bit bigger.
Oh, you want to share that? Let me. There you go.
I thought that my highlights were here. I guess they didn't make it.
Oh man.
Anyway, about 2 weeks into a major offensive, against Myanmar's military-run government by an alliance of 3 well-armed militias of ethnic minorities. An army captain fighting in a jungle area near the northeastern border with China lamented he'd never seen such intense action. His commander in Myanmar's 99th Light Infantry Division had been killed in fighting in Shan State the week before, and the 35-year-old career soldier said army outposts were in disarray and being hit from all sides. So you get this kind of the dramatic stuff doesn't really tell you anything specific from places like the AP. So if I had my highlights, I might have been able to relevant stuff that I wanted to talk about. So the offensive was launched on October 27th. So there's all these coups happening in Africa at the end of November, but there's things kicking off at the beginning of October here.
Everything's blowing up.
Beginning of November. So
yeah.
Caught by surprise by the attack dubbed Operation 1027, the military has lost more than 180 outposts and strongpoints, including 4 major bases and 4 economically important border crossings with China.
That's
looks
interesting.
Like some of my highlights somehow made it. Complicating matters for the military is China's apparent tacit support for the Three Brotherhood alliance, stemming at least partially from Beijing's growing irritation at the burgeoning drug trade and cyber scams that are being run out of Myanmar. So that's been a big problem. If you've been following, you'll know that China's been wanting to get them to deal with that for a long time. And because the government in Myanmar is a corrupt dictatorship, there's no working with them on that kind of thing. So
that's tough, man.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't
military
know
known as the
that much about that.
As much as we are hearing that maybe there's a collapse in the regime coming in the near future, let's keep a sober mind that these may be hopeful, wishful thinking. But with its unexpectedly quick and widespread losses and overstretched forces, morale is sagging, with more troops surrendering and defecting, sounding a little bit similar to things going on in Ukraine. But moving on, I would say the revolution has reached the next level, rather than to say it has reached a turning point. So, is there a real revolution going on in Myanmar? I think so.
Yeah, and look, Stay Balanced says, I agree. Oh, Stay Balanced says, I agree, Michael. There is so much on Palestine. It's important to balance the coverage. Yes.
Thank you.
So I think he's pleased. I think he's pleased that you've highlighted what's going on in Myanmar, because you're teaching me a lot about this as well, because I have no clue. So thank you.
Let's get into it. I got a bunch more here. So
yep.
Myanmar and China conduct joint naval drill. So the West is going to kind of pitch this as China is propping up the dictatorship because China's an evil fascist whatever. So it is interesting to see that China's in a very delicate position here. They are if they make moves against the dictatorship, then they're creating a hot war on their border, and China's always preferred peace, and they've placed themselves in a position as mediator between the Rohingya and the Myanmar government. So they are trying to do things the peaceful way. It's just always in the West we will portray China as doing the wrong thing. So wasn't really needing to get into reading that there. I just wanted to show you this, that they're conducting a joint naval drill, and then China's also conducting live fire drills along the border with Myanmar. So this is from CGTN, the Chinese state media. So they have released a video. It's got
your volume is music. Off.
Yeah, I can let you hear it. It's got some.
Your volume is off. Oh, it's music. Oh no, we could just talk while it's playing, because I find that you could turn the volume off. I find it kind of interesting. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know enough about what's going on over there, but I just feel like, the U.S. is trying to have beef with China right now too, right? So
Right.
this is like them propping up a dictator is just the excuse the U.S. would need to, start some shit over there. First,
Yeah,
it was, I mean, like they have Taiwan in their back pocket, but now they have this.
Yeah,
So
I think that they've been careful to make it look like they're not supporting the dictatorship in Myanmar, but I think if anyone is supporting them, it is the Americans in some way. So China is maybe just trying to respect their national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and sovereignty in the name of international law, more so, not so much for the respect of Myanmar. They're just trying to kind of be the adult in the room. So anyway, so that's that. So there's India is the other player here. They are someone we have to talk about.
Uh-oh.
So this is from 2017 because there was, like I said, this number is going to crop up a lot because there was a bit of a genocide allegations back in 2017, and now there's another one taking place now because like the genocide in Palestine, you can't just say everything started on October 7th. The genocide's been going on since basically 1948. So on Rohingya issue, both China and India back Myanmar government. Chinese foreign ministry says the international community should support the efforts made by Myanmar. China and India seldom see eye to eye with each other on international affairs. Let me make this bigger. Both countries expressed sympathy toward Myanmar's.
While you're doing that, our friend Carlos says, go ahead.
Yeah, my damn. Both countries.
Okay, while you're doing that, so Carlos says, the BRICS alliance. I agree, Carlos. Go ahead.
Okay, here they are. They just take a while to load, but both countries expressed sympathy toward Myanmar's government in spite of the international community's pressure. On August 25th, the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army attacked 30 police outposts in Myanmar's Rakhine state, leading to the killing of 10 police officers, 1 soldier, and 1 immigration officer. So this event is kind of like what kicked all of this off. Even what's going on now, it's all kind of this is the day that it started, sort of thing, in recent history. After the attack, the government of Myanmar declared the ARSA as a terrorist organization. The situation seems a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. And this is the statement by China's foreign ministry. So he says, the Chinese side condemns the violent attacks that happened in the Rakhine state of Myanmar, supports Myanmar's efforts to safeguard the peace and stability of the Rakhine state, and sincerely hopes that the Rakhine state can restore stability as soon as possible and the local people can live a normal life again. So China will release a boilerplate statement like that, and they will be accused of supporting the Myanmar government when they're just saying something diplomatic. So, right. The international community should support the efforts made by Myanmar to maintain national development and stability and create enabling external conditions for the proper settlement of the issue of Rakhine state. Very rational. On a recent visit to Myanmar, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said India shares Myanmar's concern about extremist violence in Rakhine state, and especially the violence against security forces and how innocent lives have been affected. We hope that all the stakeholders together can find a way out in which the unity and territorial integrity of Myanmar is respected, and at the same time, we can have peace, justice, dignity, and democratic values for all. So, seems like they do genuinely want this country to stay sovereign, but not everyone gets what they want, I guess. Pardon me, my phone just had a...
That's okay.
So, persecution of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar dates back to at least the 1970s. So I just wanted to get into the alleged numbers of dead, for a brief comparison with the Palestine issue, as far as the topic of textbook genocide. So using statistical extrapolations, which were based on surveys, which were conducted with a total of 3,321 Rohingya refugee households in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, a study which was conducted in January 2018 estimated that the military and the local Rakhine population killed at least 25,000 Rohingya people and perpetrated gang rapes and other forms of sexual violence against 18,000 Rohingya women and girls. They estimated that 116,000 Rohingya were beaten, 36,000 thrown into fires. So, with a grain of salt, there are extrapolations. However, anecdotal testimony from many of these people who are now safe are undoubtedly, many of their stories will be true. However, it's not exactly the most reliable. You can never really trust these body counts, is what I'm trying to say. So then there's also this from 2017, Doctors Without Borders. Surveys conducted in refugee settlement camps estimate that at least 9,000 Rohingya died in Myanmar and Rakhine State between the 25th of August and the 24th of September. As 71.7% of the reported deaths were caused by violence, at least 6,700 Rohingya in the most conservative estimations are estimated to have been killed, including at least 730 children below the age of 5 years. So very tragic, very terrible. However, I will take the opportunity to point out that what's happened in Gaza is most clearly far worse as far as children and women, I'm guessing. But moving on. So the question of whether or not the Myanmar Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, do you have a comment? No? Okay, I'll get back into it then. So
I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, I just went quiet there. I said if you had something to say, go ahead. But
I can hear you.
Okay, I'll continue.
Oh, yeah. Thinking about what you were saying about the similarities between that and what's going on in Israel, and like they can't even. Israel can't even say they're defending themselves because, according to their own doctrine, like you would have to be defending yourself from another country, but they're Gaza and West Bank, they aren't sovereign.
Right.
So this is even worse than what's happening there, I would think, because this is a sovereign nation, correct?
Right. So an interesting thing I was thinking about pointing out was that what you'll find is that the conflict in Myanmar will often be considered, you will see it being called a civil war, and you will never, as far as I can tell, see them call the situation in Palestine and Israel a civil war, except for now that you hear the Israelis trying to say that this is the war against Hamas, but it's more like a militia, not an army that they're fighting.
Right.
All right, so I'll continue here. Like karaoke fascism all over again. The military coup in Myanmar and the global rise of the far right. Everyone should be watching Myanmar right now. The history unfolding. This is March 2021, just so we don't forget. The history unfolding in the country's towns and cities is closer than some Western commentators might like to think. I wish to point out the resonances of global fascism within Myanmar, as well as the vitality of the emergent anti-fascist resistance that the civil disobedience campaign might represent. So if you'd like to read any of these articles, please feel free. I just don't have time to get into everything. So the specter of fascism in the White House has drawn the attention of the world's political commentators. The return of fascism into the mainstream political lexicon and Eli's demonstration of its continuing utility, when deployed as an excavatory lens rather than ideal type, is necessary. The emergent power of fascistic politics across the planet, from Rodrigo Duterte to Narendra Modi to Jair Bolsonaro, should not have needed Trump's presidency to be named. But it is now from Myanmar's capital, Naypyidaw, that fascist politics are emanating and echoing in a karaoke performance of both Myanmar's past and the global present. Myanmar is hard to locate in the literature on fascism, as Eli presents it, in spite of the military's anti-communist, autarkic, autochthonous, and ethnically chauvinist ideology from the mid to late 20th century. But we must name it as fascist. So it gives a few examples as to why you could
I don't even know what those words mean.
I thought all of those things, if it genuinely is anti-communist, autarkic, autochthonous, then it's fascist. Myanmar's opposition movement's most spectacular recent weapon has nevertheless been one of the oldest modern tactics for the oppressed, the general strike. The Burmese word for the verb to strike, tabik hmok, is synonymous with to boycott and literally translates as the upturning of a monk's bowl to refuse alms. It can at once evoke an act disrupting the materialistic accumulation of capital and the karmic accumulation of merit. The world historical and the particular cannot be disentangled or fully distinguished. So this is, if you learn about the Burmese socialist worldview, you will see that they have done a little bit of combining, merging Marxist thought with Buddhist belief, much like in the West, have a tendency to associate their socialism with the Christianity kind of thinking. So interesting to see how that works and how that doesn't. Myanmar's opposition movement is not singular, but multitudinous and multivocal. It may prove generative of new political subjectivities forged out of practical acts of solidarity. Some of the most widely circulated images from the protests have been those of Burmese people bearing signs disavowing their previously held prejudices against Rohingya peoples. While the term anti-fascist does not and cannot capture this living moment born out of situated praxis, we might hear in this nascent movement the echoes of anti-fascism, past and present. There are new futures for Myanmar being imagined on its streets. Socialists and fellow travelers in the West confronting their own paler manifestations of fascism and seemingly unsure of how to understand events in Myanmar, with its fallen heroine and recent ethnic cleansing, will find in Myanmar residences worth listening to. Anti-fascist solidarities must not be oriented exclusively across the North Atlantic, but to the global South as well. This is where a better future will be won or lost. I think we can all agree on that. So that was written by...
I'd be curious. I'd be curious to know or see how you combine Marxism and Buddhism. Like what parts are they taking from both of these systems to create something new?
Right. It's a whole thing we don't quite have time to get into, but there's always that polarity that develops between religious thinkers who have Marxist tendencies and then the more orthodox Marxists who prefer to be irreligious. There's like 90% of the population of the world is religious, so we're going to have to make room for some kind of compromise for religious thinking if we are actually for the people. So anyways, I got some more articles here.
Well, Todd Smith says the internet is a wealth of information and options. Thanks for sharing a piece. Oh, thank you, Todd Smith.
Okay, I'm not sure how much time we got here. We're a bit over our hour anyway.
You have any more?
Try...
Is there any more information, Michael?
Yeah, I wanted to get to at least this Midwestern Marx article just after this. So the question of whether or not they are capitalist, I just
another clue.
Myanmar has a system of military-dominated capitalism, earning the label of khaki capitalism. Military enterprises established in the 1950s have been some of the earliest and largest Burmese commercial conglomerates. Myanmar Economic Holdings Limited and Myanmar Economic Corporation are military enterprises which continue to remain central players in Myanmar's post-2011 economy. Military conglomerates are a major source of off-budget revenue for the military and a main employer of retired soldiers. Yet few veterans received more than a small piece of the profits from MEHL. The vast bulk of dividends, instead, disproportionately benefit higher-ranking officers and institutions within the Tatmadaw. Obligatory or semi-coerced contributions from active-duty soldiers are a source of cash flow for MEHL, effectively constituting a transfer from the government budget to the military's off-budget entities. Despite receiving 14% of the government budget in 2017-2018, the military claims that MEHL and MEC are necessary as they deliver off-budget revenues that reduce the military's demand on the government budget. The Myanmar military also maintains murky links to the jade industry through subsidiaries and front companies, all this making up a lucrative trade for the top generals. MEHL is heavily involved in jade through their subsidiary Myanmar Imperial Jade. MIJ is at the apex of additional subsidiaries with profits flowing back to military regiments, battalions, and generals. Tatmadaw outsources mining licenses to their cronies, such as KBZ Group, who mine jade for the military and reap the jade profits through Commercial Bank. Instead of confronting the Tatmadaw, the NLD thinks that by doing the junta a favor, they will hopefully grant them the minimal democratic reforms it wants, but it is crystal clear that they will never grant democratic reforms that truly threaten their power and privilege. Thus, this liberal path reveals itself as nothing but complicity in the efforts of the ruling class to deceive the masses. The only way to remove the junta from power is through revolutionary praxis that defends the oppressed masses from the authoritarian capitalist system under which they live. Sounds pretty clear to me. So just going to keep going because we're running out of time here. So this is from Midwestern Marks, always doing great work over there. I was looking for information from actual communists in Myanmar, and this is like the only resources that I could find. So I appreciate them very much. So why can't they wait?
Shout out to Midwestern Marks.
Why can't they wait for the new government to sort out? All in good time, and they must wait for their turn, they say. When you don't know where your next meal is coming from, when your children go hungry, how long are you willing and prepared to wait? While the Communist Party of Burma had released statements sporadically over the last several decades, a period of internal instability in the late 1980s had resulted in several organizations splitting away from the once powerful political group, most notably the United Wa State Party, which now governs the de facto independent Wa State in eastern Myanmar. Following the events of that period, English language reporting on the CPB ran cold. Although some loyalists maintain a party website since the late 1990s, the presumption was that any remaining leaders were all either killed in hiding or in exile in neighboring China. For all intents and purposes, it appeared the CPB was defunct. Less than 24 hours prior to the military coup, however, on January 31st, 2021, a statement was released by the CPB seemingly out of nowhere. The party warned of what was to come and reaffirmed its rejection of the earlier 2008 constitutional referendum, which had been overseen by a previous military government. Likewise, the party asserted its opposition to another military government taking power in the country. Shortly thereafter, as reported by Morning Star and People's World, the CPB announced the formal reestablishing of the People's Liberation Army. Not only was the Communist Party of Burma back, it was armed and ready to do battle against the dictatorship. Given the chaos of the situation, conflicting reports and assessments, as well as a general lack of readily available information, many questions were raised as to the legitimacy of the statements issued in the name of the CPB. Questions swirled among those resisting the military and observers in the region about the trustworthiness of what little was being released. Many found the timing of these events suspicious and noted that the U.S. foreign policy establishment seemed very keen to support the so-called pro-democracy forces, a common trope in campaigns of destabilization. Truth, however, is often far stranger than fiction, as this author soon discovered. Shortly after relocating to Laos in 2022, more than a year after the coup in Naypyidaw, it was introduced to a source living in Myanmar who had strong opinions regarding the current. The author of this article was introduced to a source living in Myanmar who had strong opinions regarding the current political situation. U.S. interests are at play in the region, but the military junta also maintains a tight grip on power, that most especially younger Burmese people do not want. So the following article is based on the ensuing discussions with two individuals affiliated with the Communist Party of Burma and the People's Liberation Army. So a delineation exists in the CPB between old cadres and the youth generation, with the former teaching the latter. It appears that the ideological positioning of the CPB is in line with its official public statements of adherence to Marxism, Leninism, Maoism. While in word it aligns more with the views of Mao-era China, the CPB has also eschewed what it describes as both left and right deviations, a wise decision in my opinion. There does appear to exist a degree of diverse thought within the party. Some old CPB cadres may be Maoists and some may be socialists. The term Maoist was used to imply an affinity for the political view of late 1970s China and is not related to later movements. Similarly, socialist implies something more like social democracy or democratic socialism. So the CPB is highly active in union and community organizing. Many, he says, call themselves leftists or Reds without having received training or education in political ideology or revolutionary strategy. Sounds familiar. Their unity, he stressed, is based upon individual issues and political situations. In other words, the image one gets of the fluidity and ever-shifting situation in Myanmar's political landscape is not merely a result of bad reporting. It is also a reflection of the fluidity and ever-shifting relations between the numerous organizations and actors on the ground. I would say that the word that comes to mind with that is maybe schizophrenic, but not in a bad way, hopefully. Mr. Champo lamented the situation, attributing Myanmar's continuous instability over the past 7 decades to military gangsters and the rotten politicians. The revolutionary forces lack strong leadership, he said, and this is something the Communist Party is seeking to correct. When asked about the history and current situation of the party, the two men were able to offer some clarity. They confirmed the existence of the People's Liberation Army as the armed wing of the CPB and offered further details on its operations. Strikingly, they shared that the PLA, contrary to popular belief, is not merely concentrated in the northern areas along the Chinese border. While officially holding no territory, the PLA is like a ghost troop that operates throughout the country. Not only is it active in the north, where it maintains at least 2 full battalions, it is also engaged in the south along the coast, as well as in the central areas of the country. In actuality, the men say the only area where the PLA currently isn't active is in the western areas near the Indian border. Question about the continuity of the PLA and CPB as they exist today with their previous operations during the 1980s, both men balked. They were able to confirm that the current chief of the PLA is in fact an old cadre from the CPB, but any further details were off the table. So it seems like there's a little bit of concern as to, is this genuinely the continuation of the old party? Is it maintaining its tradition, or is someone usurped them and pretending to be them? So the policies supported by the CPB today mirror both historic policy positions supported by communist parties around the world during the Second War, as well as those expressed by ruling parties in neighboring China and Laos. They envision a people's democracy for Myanmar structured as a federated state wherein all of the various ethnic groups and autonomous regions will be respected and united together under one government while still being allowed to oversee their own affairs, something which the other ethno-nationalist separatist organizations might not want, which I think is what Myanmar needs. So the CPB, which remains legally banned, will likely reject anything less than a full return to civilian rule. In the view of the CPB, Myanmar has spent over 100 years under tyranny. Mr. Champo and Mr. Denpo describe the political situation generally as slave and master. So those are just pseudonyms they have for their protection. So generally as slave and master, remarking that in order to correct the country's course, we need a revolution. As for the party's focus today, we are very simple. We want to liberate the people. So not really room for too much purity fetish over there, plain and simple. So learning the history of Myanmar is very difficult as all sides maintain an interest in how things are remembered
Not at all.
Are forgotten. Okay, almost done here, I think. They claim at least 2 full battalions. So I found there's like 5 or 6 armies at least in Myanmar. So they're talking, the mainstream media will talk about the 3 Brotherhood Alliance, which are probably the biggest armies, but there's all kinds of different little militias and armies. So the communists have been a major supporter of democratic reforms, but when the military seized power, the party called for revolution. The military's increasing brutality resulted in growing support for the Communist Party. Go figure. Northern Myanmar, he says, people had only one choice to fight: the increasingly violent crackdowns by the dictatorship, rather than breaking the people's will to fight for freedom, is instead making more and more of them come to terms with what the CPB describes as the necessity for a revolution. We obey the guidance of the Long March, he said, alluding to the grueling year-long retreat and reorganization of Chinese communist forces in 1934-1935. So they are getting inspiration. They're going through a period of time for them, which is very much just like when Mao had that Long March, which all historians agree cemented his role as chairman and saved the CPC from total destruction during the Chinese Civil War. So while the vast majority of Burmese society are farmers and workers, the bourgeois elites would prefer prolonged brutal conflict if necessary, rather than lose the wealth they've gained through exploitation and tyranny. So it is not just about ethnic conflict. It's not just about racism. There is always a class dynamic. So I asked if there is a message he would like to share with the readers and people living in the West.
Always.
The revolutionary commander said that he hopes readers will be interested in learning about the situation in Myanmar and that solidarity can be built around supporting the people's fight for democratic and human rights. I want to share with everyone what is happening in Myanmar and to share that the PLA is currently fighting against a dictatorship. I want to share what is happening and who we are. He concluded that in the future he hopes volunteers, technicians, and aid workers will come to Myanmar and help them build the people's democracy they have fought and bled for. Please share this with the people of the world, and so I have. And with that, I will.
Yes, you have.
And I think that's probably a good point to leave it there.
Well, I feel like there's so much more for me to learn and understand because, well, first of all, I've heard Myanmar, but most people aren't gonna know what's going on there and what's happening in Myanmar because it's just like so far away. Mainstream media doesn't talk about it, so it's good that you brought it to the forefront.
And the language barriers make it
Because
that the
it
people
sounds like
over
a
there,
lot of chaos happening
the people
in
who
Myanmar
are
right now.
Yeah, the people over there who are talking about it have a different language, and we can't read their press, and so it makes it hard to understand.
That is true. That is true. Well, we will land our plane and we'll see you next week, same time, Thursday at 5 p.m. Central. Shout out to Revolutionary Blackout Network, the Long Beach chapter. We have some sister and brother channels to shout out. So shout out to Beyond the Arc and to Noteworthy. I mean, not Noteworthy. We're Noteworthy. The Social Contract. Shout out to the Social Contract.
You guys
anything else you want to say, Michael, before we peace out?
I just wanted to say I've been appreciating
Yes,
everyone watching, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. I hope that you enjoyed this stream. If you have any comments, please let us know. Have a good night.